our True Abundance series continues as we're talking about in this stewardship season, as we're preparing what our gifts to God will be, will be our commitment to this mission. We're talking about our new mission statement here at Good Shepherd, inviting people, connecting people to true abundance in Christ. That's our mission. That's what we're doing here. And we talk about true abundance. For those of you who might not know, we are not talking about what you acquire, what you achieve. It's not about material wealth. It's not about possessions. It's about something else that Jesus says, I have come so they might have life and have it abundantly. What does true abundance mean? And that's what we've been wrestling with. We've talked about true abundance in this season. We've talked about 3 marks of that abundance so far. We talked about this bright faith. A faith that sometimes burns in the midst of darkness. It's really in darkness sometimes. This faith illuminates itself, that we do not keep our light, our faith under a bushel. And then the next week, Lauren shared with us a very powerful story about the brave community. That's the second marker, a brave community. That's a marker of an abundant life, of true abundance, is to have a community that walks with us, not just in the good times, but our authentic selves that are sometimes in the pits of despair. How can we be a support to others? And then last week I talked about this beautiful hope. A hope that persists, a promise that endures, that the tomb is absolutely empty. Nobody's stuffed J-Man back in the tomb, right? He's out. So what does that mean for us? For people of faith, that God is alive. What does that mean for us when we're in the pits of despair? That promise endures. And then this week, we talk about another marker. The past 3 markers have been fantastic because they're sort of like, it's very Lutheran, right? It's very Reformation Sunday to talk about grace, these provisions that God gives us that are unmerited. Faith, that we're given a community that loves us, that we're given this story of hope we didn't ask for. In fact, we put Jesus to death and he comes back from the dead. What gifts? Our 4th marker of true abundance is less about a gift that we receive, but about what we do with those gifts. Our 3rd marker is called big steps. It's about, not surprisingly, as we're talking about Peter, stepping out of the boat, walking on water. We're talking about these faithful steps, these intentional steps motivated by who God is. Because of our faith, because of the community we receive, because of the hope we've been given in Jesus, we are able to take big steps, knowing that the tomb is empty. Can you imagine the courage it would take for Peter to step out of the boat and try to walk on water? Anyone here ever attempt that? Granted, I was like 7. I was like, I think I'm fast enough. I can do this. But then imagine the courage of, in our Reformation Day, the courage of Martin Luther. To say, I'm going to do this thing and post this 95 Theses, the church that has formed me, the church that I love, the church that is proclaiming the gospel, the church that was originated by Jesus Christ himself. We are missing the mark. We are putting things in the way of this good news. And I have to say something to make this even bigger, to make sure we're doing this with integrity and honesty. And he says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this big step. And he posts these critiques of the church, the beginning of the Reformation. I always say, I've said this to some kids repeatedly, Martin Luther was a little bit of a rough around the edges. He was a little gruff. I do think it is pretty impressive he managed to write the 95 Theses with as little insults as he could. Because that guy was known for saying some really insulting things. So there's a big step there that's also being taken. And he's like, I'm going to be the bigger man. I'm not going to just be angry. I'm going to actually try to improve this. I'm going to make this better. And today, our confirmation students are taking a step in their faith journey. A step that says, as a young adult, I am going to continue this journey of faith. It's a walk. But as cool as your confirmation step is, as cool as Peter's walking on water was, I wasn't there for that. Anybody here there for that? Okay. Same thing for Reformation posting the 95 Theses. Was anyone there for that? Thank God. Okay. So, admittedly, when I think of big steps, when I think of those really bold steps, I am reminded of first steps. When you're like a baby. When you're a baby, okay, here it is, my little essay on why baby steps are a pretty big deal. People use baby steps sometimes like, I'm just taking a baby step. Okay, big steps, baby steps, I don't think this has to do with physical distance. I think this has to do with the courage and hope to take the next step. I don't know about you, if you've ever seen the first steps of a little one, their wheels are turning so hard. You can see it on their face. They're like this. Using all their brain power. They're like, I'm going to ambulate today. Put one foot in front of the other. I remember, I'm sorry to embarrass you, Amelia and Harvey. I was there for you guys' first steps. Amelia was like calculating. This is going to happen. She tried walking on couches. She was a little daredevilish. And she was like, I am really processing this. And it happened. She started going. Harvey, same intention, but I don't know if this is very Harvey. It was very devil may care. It was like, I'm going to do this. Boom. He was intense, as Harvey is very intense. He was high speed, and I remember his first step was an attempt. It wasn't actually his first step. His first attempt was far too early. That guy was ambitious. He had places to go. But he wasn't ready for it, so of course he took that tumble. And of course, young parents, he falls right to this bench we have. Of course, hits his little eyebrow. I don't know if you all have seen an eyebrow cut. It makes a surprising amount of blood. A surprising amount. Kind of alarming when you have a little one. You're like... So we went to the emergency room in Minot, North Dakota. Why not Minot? Freezing's the reason. Okay, so they fall, he falls, we take him to the ED, and we're like full-on panic mode because we've got a gushing child. That's probably a little hyperbole. Because when we get there, the doctor's like, we're coming in like, doctor's like, yeah. It's unremarkable. It's unremarkable for them. This is bread and butter stuff. They see this all the time. In fact, Harvey gets in there and they're just like, little glue. He's very grabby, if you don't know. Little kids are grabby. You can't put like a Band-Aid on there, it'll peel it right off. So they glue it shut and the doctor goes, all right, here we go. And there's some glue in your diaper bag because this is going to happen again. It didn't, thankfully. But Harvey still has a cool little scar to this day. And I thought that was really profound. I think about that now. Why do kids have this attitude, this carelessness, this carefreeness, this, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's that intentionality, that drive. It's like it's in their bones. They're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk. I'm going to ambulate. And when I think about it, I think about our first 3 markers of true abundance. I think of what they possess is this feeling that they can do it, that they're going to do it. There's a faith there. They don't have any evidence personally of walking, but they're like, I'm going to do it. I've heard a rumor of this. I've seen it around. I'm going to ambulate. Second, kids are really lucky. We are operating as a community that loves them. That even if that step gets really wild, if I take a big tumble, like Harvey, bust my little eyebrow, someone's going to pick me up. Someone's going to say, you're all right. You're okay. There's going to be a community there, a brave community that says, I love you. I'm with you. That was a good try. And then finally, there's this hope. I don't know if you see it in their faces, but little kids know after this first step, there's going to be a second. I know it. After the second, there's going to be a third, and it won't be long until I am. Parents know this is the case. Kids don't know this from experience, but they have this hope in them. They hope. Every kid thinks they're the fastest kid that's ever lived. And it's because they have this hope that what's going to happen here is going to change me. It's going to move me. Baby steps are no small thing. They have packed behind them all of this hope and faith and community and trust and confidence that we must inspire as a church as well. Big steps is the word we use, but it has nothing to do with physical distance. Big steps are intentional steps. Big steps, like baby steps, have nothing to do with the size of them. It has everything to do with our hopes connected to them, our intentions connected to them. I think about Peter's step out of that boat. I think about the child's first step, believing that this can be done. I loved in Peter's step, did you guys see he says, Jesus, if that's really you, just tell me I can do this. Invite me out. Because he knows Jesus won't invite him out to sink. And what does Peter do? He takes a huge step out of the boat. And I'm still, every time I read this, I get all jazzed. I'm like, he's actually doing it. That 7-year-old me who was like, I'm going to run so fast, I'm going to stay on top of the water like a lizard, is like, this is happening. This is amazing. And his fear sometimes sets in, as it does in that story. The waves overwhelm him. He starts to sink. And what does he do? In that big step, he starts panicking and getting afraid. Lord, help me. Because, as that doctor told us, stumbles are bound to happen. Steps inevitably sometimes cause falls. But like that doctor said, it's fine. Put the glue on there. It's going to happen again. You're okay. You can do this. I love Jesus reaching out his hand, takes him. When he calls for Jesus' help, he gets it. And he goes, you could have done it. The moment you started doubting was when this started to fail. We've all seen kids riding their bikes too. It's when they start worrying about the mailbox that, of course, they hit the mailbox, right? There's something about this willingness God has to support us through a brave community, through this reassuring hope, through this continued faith that God is giving us, that we can do this thing. And we can do this thing together. So how about you? We heard about big steps taken by Martin Luther. We heard about the big step taken by Peter. We're hearing about the steps taken by our confirmands today. We have heard about the steps we've all taken in our first ones. What is our step today? Not all of us are affirming our faith in the rite of confirmation, but there will be a part where we're declaring who God is. We get to proclaim all those things that are in the creeds. But what's our next big step? Because it doesn't need to be big in size. It simply demands our intentionality. It should reflect our daring confidence that not only can we do this, like a child who's taking their first steps, we were made for this. Made for these steps. Good Shepherd is in a really unique place. Y'all know, there's a bunch of you here today on Reformation Sunday, Confirmation Sunday. This last weekend, we had Trunk or Treat. For those of you who helped with that, thank you so much, because boy, howdy, was there a line. We had like 200-some kids show up. Folks, that's a kind of momentum, a kind of something, a special je ne sais quoi, of this place has something important. Something is coming from here. Something important, a faith, a hope, a community of love that will support you and welcome you. We have so many gifts. I have a suspicion in this time we are not meant to circle our wagons, cozy up for a nice long winter's nap. we're called to, as we've always been called to, take the next step. Take the next big, bold, brave step. It may in distance look like a baby step, but it's intentional. What are we going to do? How are we going to respond to God's invitation to this journey? I loved Pastor Lauren's sermon the other day when he shared with us his stole, his pastor's stole that was given to him by his campus ministry pastor. One of his mentors, there was the little hills, and one of them was his army uniform. But I loved the path that was going through it and the note you received that said, every step is the way. That's profound for all of us to consider. We're not meant to stand still. This faith isn't about, I've been confirmed, done. Or I've been to worship, done. It's a step. It's a journey. It's a continued walk of faith. Babies know it. We know it. It's in our very bones. We are meant to do this. And folks, if any of you know what little kids know, one step usually leads to 2, leads to 3, 4, and pretty soon we're just off to the races. What's our next step going to be? It's God's intention for us to prosper and have life and have it abundantly. Thank God that every step is the way. Amen.